Well, hello and welcome. This is Semrush's Social Chat 2.0. And today we are talking about simple hacks to instantly increase Facebook ad conversions. I'm your host, Rebecca Radice, and I am joined by this wonderful group of experts. And to kick us off, Andrew, I'm gonna come to you first. Andrew Foxwell joins us. He is the co-founder of Foxwell Digital, where he guides, manages, and consults with companies, nonprofits, and brands on social media advertising with a specific focus on Facebook and Instagram. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Where are you located?
I live in Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay. So we have people from all around the world. And of course, people that are watching us live on YouTube today. I'd love to hear where everybody is from. So drop that into the chat as well. Madison, Wisconsin. I'm in Los Angeles. And Steph, you're over in Germany. How are you?
I'm doing well and really happy to be here. So yes, I'm in Germany right now and really excited that I was able to join you guys for this.
Yeah, likewise. I know we're at the opposite ends of the day. And just a little bit of background on Stephanie. So she is the paid advertising manager at Tailwind with her background in both startup and corporate marketing and social media. Steph brings just a wealth of experience to her team, and she devotes her free time, kind of a fun fact, to theater and film performing and enjoys skiing and surfing. Where do you find all the time?
I don't even know, and I'll take calls while I'm doing it.
Okay, wait a second. You're not taking calls while you're surfing and skiing, are you?
Well, when I'm down on the slopes and then on the sand.
All right. Maybe once you have that cocktail in your hand, right?
Right.
Oh, and then Andrea Vall is a social media consultant and speaker. She is a co-author of Facebook Marketing All-in-One for Dummies, and her newest book is Facebook Ads Made Simple. She was the community manager for Social Media Examiner for over 2 years and has appeared in, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine how many top lists of Facebook ads specialists. And she is also, another fun fact, a stand-up comedian. Welcome, Andrea.
Thanks so much. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me on the show.
You can tell a host through and through, right? You are accustomed to hosting your own.
I am. I know, right? I know. Funny.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again to all of you for taking time out of your busy day. I think Facebook is definitely top of mind with F8 just having taken place over this last week. Or so, and just all of the conversation around all of that. And in fact, Andrea, I was reading your article and thought it would be a great place to kick us off, reading about all of the Facebook changes that have transpired and brought us to where we are today in 2019. It's hard to believe we're already in May. Where is this year gone?
I know, right? Halfway through. And now we have to have a halfway through the year update on all the changes. But
all right, so you give us the halfway through. So what do we need to know that has changed that could quite possibly impact our strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big things are things that have been kind of going on for a little while. The change in image sizes, there's a range of image sizes that you're available to use now. The square has been much more prominent, square images much more prominent. There's definitely some changes in kind of what's available in pixel tracking. They've got different standard events now that allow you to segment kind of your tracking a little bit more. A lot of cosmetic changes are coming down the pike. That's something that some people have currently as a new cosmetic change to Facebook, the Facebook Ads Manager. Definitely the other thing that's big is that they're really pushing people into using the Business Manager. If you are using custom audiences, you have to have the Business Manager in order to use a custom audience with an email list. So that's something that a lot of people are nervous about, but I always tell people it's actually not a bad thing. Business manager isn't the devil, but it's okay. And it's really going to be better for your management and for a team as well. So.
Yeah, it's funny that you say business manager isn't the devil, because I definitely hear so much pushback on that on a consistent basis.
Right.
And so it's interesting to see that we're getting that nudge, that you definitely have to make a move over that direction. Is there any one of those updates that's got you pretty excited over another?
Well, I think some of the things that are exciting are just the way people are using, video is the other thing that I didn't quite mention in there too. But like, I think video is one of the more exciting aspects of Facebook ads right now. It's not necessarily a change, but I think that more and more people are using it. You've got, different placements that you're using it in. You've got lots of different ways to catch people's attention with video. And there's also a lot more video tools that are coming out that make it easier to create video on a small budget. Because used to be you have to, hire some videographer, designer, editor person, where the tools now are making it really easy to create an eye-catching video.
That's exciting. Exciting that it's becoming easier in a way for people to really jump in and take advantage of all that Facebook ads have to offer. Where, back in the day, we had to be everything, right? We had to be copywriter. We had to be just all of these things. And I think that kept a lot of people out of it. Would you agree, Steph, that there were definitely limitations in how you could get into ads and quickly and easily use those ads?
Yes, definitely. There was a huge learning curve. And when I worked privately with a few clients, that was always the hesitation about jumping into Facebook ads and not really understanding what formats were available and what different placements they should be using, and even how to get good content and create good content for those different types of ads. So there was a lot of coaching involved. And now with just your cell phone, if you have an HD camera on your Apple or anything on your iPhone, you can quickly just shoot a video and use that on like a Facebook story or an Instagram story, and that you can promote yourself. And it's a wonderful piece of content that you can use that is an inside look to your business or to whatever service you're offering.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and Andrew, I know you are working both on the B2B as well as the B2C side with companies on a daily basis. Are you seeing any changes in 2019 where one strategy is more effective over the next?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of changes in 2019 that people have been aware of. I think one big one is campaign budget optimization, or CBO, which allows you to set a budget at the campaign level, and then that budget flows into the ad sets. So based on performance. So there's a ton of nuance around that, and a lot of people are seeing pretty good success with that right now, especially as it relates to scale. But there's also ups and downs of it too. There's some times where it just doesn't work as well for, some advertisers that are smaller. It requires a lot of patience to kind of let it suss itself out and see if it's actually going to work. I think that's one. I think another one that people are seeing really good success with this year is we've seen a consistent amount of daily active user traffic on Instagram story and prospecting. So specifically in reference to brand new traffic, looking at people that are, there just wasn't enough people there under the conversion objective specifically for direct response before. And in 2019, there's a consistent amount of people that we're able to actually find and utilize that for prospecting. So that's been very, very helpful for us. And I think another one that a lot of people are utilizing at this point is value or ROAS bidding. It's not entirely rolled out globally or worldwide at this point, but that actually allows you under the conversion objective to optimize for the most valuable customers within a certain audience that you're targeting. And that's a tactic that a lot of people are using that's really helping to drive conversions and sales. So I think those are sort of like the big three that I see. I mean, along with, of course, the creative changes, allowing you to go through and utilize Facebook's ad creation tools and things that you didn't have before, allowing you to crop your own videos. I mean, we just had a client in the month of April that went from spending about $250 a day to $18,000 a day in a month. Not a normal thing, but what we did is we required them to shoot us take new photos of the product in nature on their iPhone and video every day. And they just sent them to us via Slack, and we cropped them utilizing Facebook's tools. And we're allowed to just keep that kind of process going. So a lot of times the creative stuff is like a roadblock for a lot of people. But I think, as Andrea said before too, it's like, doesn't have to be. It can be as simple, and actually user-generated content, or UGC, is like a bigger part of it. So I think those are kind of some of my thoughts of like 2019, what we've seen that's been a little bit different.
Well, and you talked, there were several pieces in there. I love that you touched on patience, because I think that is a challenge many, many times where we don't see those instant results. So when you talk about patience and when you're really working with a client, what does that look like to you? What is that time frame?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on, a number of different factors for the client, right? But generally speaking, in let's just speak about direct response on Facebook, in the US, Canada, Germany, and in what Facebook calls tier 1 countries that have high quality users. Generally speaking, the expectation that I set in that sense is, if we've never run Facebook ads before, then my goal is to break even in 30 days on return on ad spend, right? So there's a ton of stuff we have to test. There's a lot of creative we have to test. And a lot of people think that that's very conservative, and many times it is, and you'll do better than that. But you have to set that expectation, I think, when you're working with clients. And even if you're internal at a company, you don't have any idea if you've never done it before. And your pixel has to take time to some people call it like seasoning the pixel, like you would a skillet or something. So that's big in terms of being patient. I think the other thing with patience is, I think to be transparent, I think there is a challenge between Facebook representatives saying, be patient, and what your business can handle and what the numbers can handle. And I think Facebook has pushed a little bit onto that patience a little bit too much. And a lot of people just can't handle that level, and they can't handle the budgets that requires. Right. So what that really requires, I think, for you is just being clear with yourself about like, what's actually reasonable to me. Andrew Foxwell, other people online say it should be this in 30 days. Okay, that's something I can handle. And if you can't handle that, if you need a 4x return on ad spend immediately, it's just, that's going to be a really tough road, right? So that's kind of how we start to think about expectations.
Yeah. I think it's crazy that people do have that. They put those expectations on Facebook for really fast, big return, when those expectations may not be on other avenues that they're marketing in, or that they don't have the back end or the landing pages optimized in the right way. Because there's so many factors that go into it. Is your, what's the price point of your product? What's your current conversion rates? And, so I think people have to know some of those numbers before being able to analyze, hey, where's the profit line on this, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think those are all such great points where we're wanting to jump so fast from A to Z instead of recognizing there may be multiple things that we've got done on the front end while we're testing, to your point, Andrew. And you also talked about optimization. At what stage within those 30 days? So if I'm, let's say, B2B, and I've come to you and we're talking about that 30-day ad strategy, kind of walk me through from beginning to end what that process looks like, both from talking through copy to design. What do people need to be prepared for as they're considering increasing their ad spend or really worrying about what their Facebook marketing outcome or results are going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can be very long-winded. So there's a very long answer to that. And I actually taught I taught a 2.5-hour class on scaling for John Loomer last year, and I taught an hour-long class on optimization and organization in your Facebook ads account for John. So I could go 3 hours about those topics. but I think generally speaking, yeah, we'll start with the abbreviated version, because I think there's a lot of nuance. And I think within digital marketing, one thing that we always want to make sure of as people that are educating others is that not trying to boil it down too much and being upfront the fact that there's a lot of steps. But I think that generally speaking in optimization, what it looks like is number one, just establishing, as Andrea alluded to, like, what are your goals? What are the numbers that you need to hit that you believe are actually reasonable? So, and also, like, what are your business numbers? So these are things like click-through rate, cost per landing page view, return on ad spend, cost per acquisition, et cetera, click-through rate, right? Like site conversion rate. And so once you've established the numbers, then it comes to, how long do I need to let things run? Generally speaking, Facebook, depending on how you have your ads account built, you're gonna have a pretty good idea of things after they've been running for, let's just say, 3 to 7 days. Okay, so some people will want it to run for 7 days. Some people will get impatient after 3, but like, that's generally what you're kind of looking at. And then it's a matter of sitting down and saying, okay, as I design this, how am I speaking to the different segments of my audience? So what are the words how am I talking to them? Not everybody's going to respond to the same offer, right? So like, what are the ways you're going to describe your product? What are the ways that you're going to talk about the service that you offer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in a lot of different ways, and have kind of different hooks and pitches, utilizing what is really known as like horizontal scaling which is, trying to build your account to reach and talk to a lot of different people, versus just vertical scaling, which is increasing budget. So, as you kind of go through that optimization process, you can look at that after you've established your numbers and say, okay, doesn't seem to be hitting. What's another thing I can do to optimize this? And a lot of it tends to be around audience, but a lot of it, the number one thing is creative. So that's the greatest thing about this world, is you can try something, and if it doesn't seem to be getting what you want, you can change it out and try it again to the same audience, et cetera.
Right. Yeah, Steph, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, so I think it's great, Andrew, that you brought in the topic about creative, because one of the things and rule of thumb that I have whenever I'm setting up new campaigns, regardless of the amount of audiences that I have, I want a big mix of different types of creative that I can just start off and then optimize based on which one's going to be my top performer. So which one am I comfortable with putting that spend behind, because I'm seeing that whatever results that I've gotten are within the numbers, as you mentioned before, that are comfortable for me. So for me, I would even say that whenever I'm launching a campaign, I look to have at least 10 to 20 different pieces of creative, mixes of copy to add in and launch all of those, because it's so important to have that and to be able to tweak from that, versus starting off with one piece of creative and not being able to then utilize the different mixes and change them based on your different audiences that you're going to start bringing into the campaigns.
Andrea, we have several questions coming in, and I think, Andrew, you did a great job in answering this, but is there anything additional you would share? Matt asks, what would you recommend be the minimum amount of time to run a Facebook ad campaign? He said, we completed a 2-week hiring ad using the Facebook Pixel to optimize for completed online apps and didn't get the results.
Yeah, so you're asking me, right?
I
was like, Andrew or Andrea. So yeah, I saw that come in, and I definitely had a couple thoughts, because Andrew did great job, and I usually use the same 3 to 7 days. You've got a good clue, but there are other things that you need to watch as keys that might give you some clues on how that ad is doing. Things like click-through rate, which would then indicate, is that ad interesting to those people? How long are they then spending on your landing page? Is there something going wrong there with the experience? So you've got to watch some of the clues and kind of put yourself in the shoes of who you are targeting that ad to. But definitely there is a learning phase for the ads, like Andrew had mentioned too, and you need to let that settle, because a lot of times I'll see the price spike up on certain things and then it, kind of settles back down after that 3 to 7 day time frame, and it can depend a little bit on the budget as well. So I think take a look at the different metrics that Facebook has available to you and see, are people even clicking? Have I tested enough things? Can you look at the breakdown reports and say, hey, is there some segment that actually is responding here? And could we, try and pull that piece out a little bit more? Are people even commenting it? Because I think ads for hiring actually do really, really well. Typically, people are tagging each other. They get a lot of shares. So if you're not getting that, I would kind of try and investigate, maybe pull another test up and see if you can change those results.
To add to that,
I was going to ask if those were ads that you were running and if you had any insight on that as well.
Yeah, actually we are running some ads like that. And one of the things is the initial setup can sometimes be a hang up for a lot of people, and myself included. Sometimes different types of ads and objectives, Facebook will optimize them for a different results. So it's kind of dependent, if you're not getting the results you're seeing, maybe even backtrack it further to see, what did I really set this up for? Was it for an actual completed registration, or was it just traffic to my site, or was it a video and then people are just viewing it and dropping off but not really furthering an action? So that's another potential factor that we tend to forget.
Great point. John Lepore also asks, and Andrew, maybe you can speak to this one. Do you have a recommendation on how to calculate an appropriate budget for a client?
Yeah, so budgeting can be, generally speaking, there's a lot of nuance to this, but generally budgeting, what you're looking for is, let's say that your goal is $10. Let's say that you want to be able to say, okay, if we can get these submissions on this job thing for $10 or less, then you can look at it and say, okay, I want to be able to get 5 of those per week, or whatever the number is. Maybe it's 5 per day. Actually, we'll just take the example of 10 per day. So then it's like, if it's $10, and then each of those ad sets needs to be, if you want to try to get 10 through, then each ad set needs to be $100 a day, right? So you sort of align what you're trying to do in terms of your goal with what actually you're trying to get Facebook through. So a lot of times I'll see people saying like, oh, my remarketing isn't working, and their cost per acquisition goal or cost per lead goal is like 10, it might be $20, but the remarketing budget is at like $7. So that would require then that it would, hypothetically, if you're trying to break even, that you would have to run it for like almost 3 days to get there. You see what I'm saying on that? Yep. So it's like, that's kind of the way that I start to budget. As it relates to campaign budget optimization, budgeting, that's a whole other can of worms in terms of how you go about that, because depending on the number of ad sets and creatives you have under it, that you need to adjust it that way. So if you have 4 ad sets underneath and your goal is to get, a conversion through on $10 a day, then that campaign budget needs to be $40 a day to get one through each of the ad sets under that campaign budget optimization campaign. Kind of a tongue twister. So that's the way that I think about budgeting. Generally speaking, you also, though, have to balance those numbers with also what you're comfortable with, right? So as you spend more, you can add more complexity, right? So if you're saying, look, I don't really know what I need to budget, and you've not really done it before, then you can assign a number and say, look, my gross margin is X. So I think that if we can get a sale for $20 on a $50 product, then let's take $20 and let's try, try that in 2 different ad sets, maybe a prospecting ad set to brand new customers and a remarketing ad set. And let's assign that $50 a day and let's see what happens, right? So you're not locked into any hard rules, generally speaking, but if you followed the advice of a lot of our colleagues, and it becomes very overwhelming very quickly. So I think start with what you're comfortable with, but know that you want that ad set budget to be at least even with what your CPA goal is, so you can get some conversions through there.
Well, and talking about just the overwhelming nature of what it can feel like to not only think about what these ads are going to look like, but the scaling aspect that you were talking about. Andrea, I'm going to come back to you because we were kind of half joking about it, but Starling asks, do mere mortals use the Facebook ad manager, and can they actually succeed with it, or do they need to hire somebody to help them out?
That's a great question, because I get that all the time, because it has become more complicated, and you can make big mistakes that will essentially waste your money. So definitely mere mortals can use Facebook ads with success. But you need to make sure you understand the settings and you understand the different options that are available. And it's challenging because it's a moving target, right? They're always adding in new things. I go in there and I'm like, what's this? All of a sudden there's through play, or there's, some other optimization tactic. And I'm like, I don't know. And so I think for sure, get some training, have a place where you can ask questions and keep up with some of the changes. But definitely the other question that comes into play is, can you be successful with a small budget? And absolutely, there are a lot of my clients who have very small budgets and are still getting good return on their investment. And just by being super smart with limiting the number of tests they have, really focusing in and doing kind of analysis on what's really working, and just kind of continuing to iterate when they have the next monthly budget kind of thing. So definitely you can. It is a lot to keep up with. And so just make sure you have a good source of information.
Well, and let's give them something tangible to hang on to. So when you talk about a small budget, what number comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I have clients who are just running ads for $100, or very small, even $500, And so, because I think that's a challenge when you're, especially with a solopreneur who has a lot of different places to spend money, and a lot of different choices, and a lot of different things that they have to keep up, and especially a startup as well. It might feel like, oh, do I have to spend $1,000 a day? And no, absolutely not. If you're really smart and picking the right types of strategies to do things like grow your email list and using maybe whatever seed audiences you can to kind of target those best potential customers, then you can do really well with, $100, $500.
Well, and I know we talked a little bit about landing pages and where are we directing that traffic? Where are we sending people? And Lauren asks if anybody wants to answer this one. Do you recommend creating specific landing pages for segmented audiences to land on?
I would definitely say yes. Myself included, have found that that the results that I get from a very generic landing page versus a very targeted landing page with messaging that's tailored to a particular audience group, I mean, they're just totally different, where the segmented one, blows the other one out of the water, basically. You can get super fine-tuned and really speak to whatever the pain point of your customer is, to whatever whatever their need is, and get super tailored that way. And you don't necessarily need to spend a ton of time doing this when you're trying to churn out maybe different variations of a landing page, 1, 2, 3, whatever it might be, depending on how many customers that you serve. You can just, it's simple changes like changing headlines, maybe an image that it speaks and resonates more to that audience, and will really make a difference.
Yeah, and I was going to ask too along those lines, Andrew, and you spoke a little bit to this, Steph, but any other thoughts, Andrew, on I'm a smaller business, I don't have a lot of bandwidth, I don't have the ability to create a ton of different landing pages. Are there best practices in how to optimize, maybe 1 or 2 landing pages for conversions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple different things. One is instead of testing them simultaneously, test them in cadence. So test them like test one landing page with one ad over a couple days, and then try that, and then pause it and try another one over another couple days. Because with small budgets, if you're testing them next to each other or in parallel within the same ad set or even in different ad sets, that's going to create some challenge as it relates to kind of understanding the results. The other thing that you can do is, utilizing, if you're a small business owner and you've not done this before, but you're curious about what are people doing on my landing page, there are tools like Hotjar or Crazy Egg that are slightly creepy, but allow you to basically see what people are doing on your site. You don't get to see their name or anything, but you can watch their session, and it's anonymous. And that's really helpful because if you get an idea of where they're dropping off, right? And I think it's also a Facebook marketer's really good thing to have in their toolbox. They're easy to install. It's just some code, and basically you get to see, because a lot of times you get the instance like that gentleman, whoever it was that asked before about the job thing. You run it for 2 weeks, then the client comes back to you and is like, "What the heck? Why didn't this work?" And you did your job of creating a good ad, but when they get there, what happens? Yeah. So making sure that you're informing that as well. So I think this is not difficult, actually. Like, I'm not very tech, I'm not a coder. Okay, let me be clear. So it's not that hard to get these things installed. And I think if you're a small business owner and you're looking to learn, that's an interesting thing to do, because you can share those with maybe your web developer and say, "Here, what do you think? Here's what people are doing." And it's also kind of rounds out a good way to spend your money as you go through testing landing pages.
Yeah, I think that's a great point back to the question about business manager and whether or not mere mortals can actually use it with success. And there is that balance in your business of, do you have more time or do you have more money? Meaning, are you just getting started in your business? You have time and ability to learn these things, or are you maybe later stages in your business and it's a better use of your time to hire that agency to help you come in with all of these moving pieces? So yeah, there is a lot to consider within all of this. And there's a follow-up question to the landing pages. Scott Greer asks, if you guys have any favorite landing page tools that you're using specifically for Facebook ads. So building out landing pages, I believe, is what they're asking.
Yeah, so I've used lead pages in the past. It's pretty easy to install, like the pixels there and do the tracking. If you're doing webinars, like things like Webinar Jam or Demio or Click Meeting are all good options that have tracking capabilities as well. And what you really want to look for in any landing page is, the ability to have the Facebook pixel in there somehow, and also make sure that you've got that tracking on the thank you page as well, or wherever you're sending that traffic. So that's the biggest thing. And I actually like, if you can, I like to just keep it all on your own site. If that's the personal preference, but there are a lot of tools out there that make it easy.
Anybody else have any other tool suggestions?
Yeah, well, recently been using Unbounce, which I think is pretty great, especially if you're newer to landing pages and you're gonna try to handle the do-it-yourself kind of marketing. The drag and drop features for creative are really, really simple and kind of fun to use if you've never really done it before. So that aspect I think is great about Unbounce. That just make it super user friendly and easy. And then also Instapages. I've used them in the past. Don't know about any new features within them, but I do remember that they were very user friendly as well. So if you're first starting out and kind of building landing pages for the first time, those two are pretty good go-tos.
An interesting question from Jeffrey Radcliffe. I'm not sure if any of you have experience. Being in Colorado, I'd throw this to you, Andrea. But
yeah, I saw that question come in, and I can So
you can speak to it. Yeah.
Yes,
So
I can, because
it's all around age-restricted products. So he's asking, what are some hacks for social media ad placement that you've seen effective for age-restricted products, cannabis specifically? And you're in Colorado, which is why I'm making that.
Well, cannabis is a prohibited item on Facebook, including CBD oil, or even hemp is even, if it's not prohibited, it might be restricted. And it's very challenging and frustrating for those states where it's legal, and they're like, it's legal here, but it's Facebook's playground. So go over to Google or something, wherever, you can't do much about it. So, and age restrictions is another challenge. I have had clients who were trying to reach that market that's younger than 13. You just really at that point have to, connect with their parents, or, try and market to them. And, below 13-year-olds aren't supposed to be on Facebook anyway. I know they are, they just changed their age. So, but do they have cash? Really? Just talk to their parents. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Really good point. Anything else to add to that, Andrew?
No, I don't know much about it, to be honest. I just basically, anytime anybody comes to me with things that are ideas around things that are slightly around the restricted content, I'm very careful around giving advice, because I don't have any, I don't do it. And at this point, it's I think it's a challenge for those industries as they grow, without the big three, really, without Facebook and Twitter and Google, and Instagram. Like you can't do it. So a lot of it's reliant upon influencers and content marketing. And that would be my suggestion.
Yeah. So there's organic. That's where a lot of people go, is just try and really build up organically. And, Facebook is being extremely proactive on shutting ad accounts down. In fact, a little bit skewing to the accounts that aren't even really doing, or aren't even violating rules. Sometimes they're very quick to shut things down. So you have to watch that, and your whole ad account's gone, all your pixel data, everything. So all your history. So in my opinion, it's not worth to try and get things through, because everything will get shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned influencers, a little bit different question, but around influencers and targeting. Sterling asked, should I target my ads to super influencer audiences, existing audiences of 500,000 to 10 million people on a particular topic of interest? Is this is something any of you have worked within and found successful?
I mean, it depends on what he means by super influencers. I don't know if he means like you're targeting them as an interest, or does he mean that you're actually taking audiences and creating lookalike audiences to target them on Facebook?
And he doesn't get that specific.
But I mean, I'll just say briefly, like, there are different types of customers. Again, thinking back to horizontal scaling methodology, there's different types of customers you can reach with lookalike audiences and then with interest audiences. So I would say at this point in time, strategically, since the topic of our webinar is how to increase, your conversions, I think it's utilizing larger audiences at this point is helpful. Utilizing audiences that have more leash, as we call it, it's a better idea, because they offer more scale and they're going to reach more people. One of the things that's tough is when you try a lot of small audiences, and that can work, but it's as you increase the budget, it becomes more difficult over time, because only the conversion objective on Facebook, if you look at the overall audience, is only about 10% of the audience on Facebook are those that convert. So you run out of those people quickly when you're utilizing smaller audiences. So Andrea, you sure have a lot of color to add to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really just about testing, because it's about, if you're going to say you're going to target Gary Vee's audience, just to use him as a kind of super influencer, you can definitely target Gary Vee as an interest keyword, but you have to test it, because I've found that it's product by product, company by company, on how well that responds to that particular thing that you are offering. So I've had audiences where we, just to again use Gary Vee as an example, say we're targeting the audience of Gary Vee with one ad, and I think, oh, that's good, it's a similar niche, let's target Gary Vee again, and it doesn't convert as well. So it's always about the testing.
Yeah, definitely.
And as you're adding in, I was going to add in that as you're adding in new audiences, just to kind of reiterate with the testing, if your audience is almost very closely matched, so for example, like Gary Vee, if they're kind of the same type of people like that are responding to that, sometimes there's a bit of a competition that happens. So finding things that might match up too well sometimes can cause cause a little bit of a competition happening. But there's also instances where you just find similar audiences, and that might work a little bit better. So just playing around with what you would think that interest would be.
Well, we're talking a lot about very specific ways to increase those Facebook ad conversions. But thinking about this from a business owner's perspective, we know that there's a lot of people spending time on Facebook. They're scrolling through their feed, and they're not necessarily ready to buy. They're not ready to pull that trigger right then and there. How can you nurture? How can you use Facebook ads more on that front end, from that awareness level, and then also down into the nurture level, to really build that relationship, to create rapport, so that you are able then to turn those looky-loos into buyers? Andrew, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing, I audited over 200 accounts last year, 200 Facebook and Instagram ad accounts I looked at. That's a big part of what I do. And in looking at that, I would say 90% of them didn't have any sort of middle funnel built out. And really what I mean by that is those that have expressed some sort of interest on your product. That could be something like an engager custom audience, so those that have engaged with your Instagram and Facebook content. That could be utilizing a larger remarketing window, so looking at something like a top 25% website custom audience, which takes the top quartile of users in the last 180 days, and then you can exclude your 30-day. It looks at things like your email list that haven't been to the site in 30 days. So sort of capturing your Facebook fans. So sort of capturing those middle funnel conversions or middle funnel audiences rather, is a great way to increase conversions, because there's a lot of ways that they're looking in, but they might not kind of come back. And so you kind of have to move them along per se, because the old model of just sending people to a site and assuming they're ready to buy immediately isn't necessarily the case anymore. So that's a big part of it. As you can start to capture and nurture. I think a lot of it as well is thinking about the creative differentiation between the top, the middle, and the bottom of the funnel. So understanding that at the top, it's really about getting them hooked of like, what's that? That's interesting. What is that? I'm going to just check that out. And looking in the middle funnel, it's a lot around product benefits, a lot around user-generated reviews and trust, and building kind of that conversation. And then in the bottom of the funnel is very much around the conversion. So what can you offer them a discount code? Can you offer them some sort of previous experience to go off of that? So that's kind of the way that I think about building that out a little bit more in terms of looking full funnel at your audience.
We have a lot of questions here.
They're pouring in.
I know, it's terrific. I'm trying to keep up with all of them. Let me, since Andrew, you just talked, Andrew, I keep making it sound like a mix of Andrew and Andrea. You touched on remarketing. Andrea, I'll let you take this one. Camille asks, if my remarketing list is too narrow, would you recommend using similar audiences? Is this accurate?
Yeah, so that is a huge problem with not to say, I don't know what size you consider as too narrow, but like that can be very much of a problem when people are just starting out, that they haven't had a lot of traffic to their site. Maybe they're trying to remarket to a very narrow audience, and you can't scale that budget up very much. So I would definitely suggest continuing, definitely use that audience, but just make sure that your budget is appropriate, because I've seen people just burn the audience out with 10 times frequency, and then they're like, oh, my remarketing audience didn't work. And I'm like, no, they got sick of you. They hate you now, so they,
put it a really nice way, right?
Yeah.
But use that audience for sure, but make sure that your budget is appropriately scaled. So I try not to go, over a potential reach of more than half of that audience for sure, or even less sometimes. And it's hard to tell now that Facebook has changed the way they show that with custom audiences. So, but don't think that a lookalike audience is going to be a perfect place to do your sales ads, because a lookalike is still going to be a cold audience for you. Mm. So make sure that you're not confusing that like, oh, they're going to be ready to buy too. They're still going to, a lookalike audience of your, current customers or people who had multiple purchases is a great audience, but they're not going to be ready to buy. They're still going to need to go through a nurture sequence from you to get warmed up to your product. And some people it depends on like the typical, conversion that people have. Is it a impulse buy at a lower price point, or does it take some, connection from you to be able to make that larger purchase? So that depends a little bit too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and another piece that kind of falls in line with this, as we're talking about conversion objectives, Kaylee asks, how much data does Facebook require before the conversion objective can be reliably used? Steph, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think Andrea touched on it before, but it takes a few days to really start acquiring a little bit of data around your campaign. If you're a newer ad account, there's a bit of a difference there. If you've been running ad campaigns, you have more data built up based on your history. So if you're a newer ad account, I would say it's going to take a few campaigns before you start seeing any like differences and patterns and things like that. But I would say running a few campaigns when you're starting out to acquire your data initially, but then when you start a new campaign, I would give it a few days in order to really start seeing anything that you can, make optimizations on and changes like that.
Back to that whole patience idea, right?
Right.
Yeah, take your time.
Right.
This is an interesting question from Nicole Jennings that I have a feeling you're all going to have rather strong opinions on. So what do you think about the sites that are out there where you can buy audiences? Have you used them? Have you found success? Would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Facebook makes it clear that that's illegal. So, I mean, unless you buy the list from a data broker and you're able to upload that list, that's still kind of frowned upon within Facebook's world. So I would just not do that at all. Frankly, I just don't think it's worth your time or how close it puts you to potentially having your ad account banned. I think you'd be better off utilizing interests and going that way and slowly building up your audience to be able to create your own lookalikes and things like that. So I would just stay away from it entirely, my own personal opinion.
Run, don't walk is what I hear you saying. And Andrea, you talked about banning and things that will get you banned. Have you seen any situations like this where people?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I've known people who've done it. It's like, are you going to get caught? Maybe, maybe not. And I've heard of people getting caught. But it is like Andrew said, it's against Facebook's terms. So just, and I've had people have done it and haven't had great results, because a lot of times those purchase lists are just kind of junk lists. Are they really going to be your customers? Probably not. So just spend your money on building your own audience and do it right from the start.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to, I think any instance we can think of within our business, whether it's an email list, back in the days when people were considering purchasing those email lists. It's all very similar in
Yeah.
why you wouldn't want to do this and why you want to really authentically go about building that audience. So let's see. Let's take a look here. We've got several more questions. Jennifer Yang asks, she was having delivery issues. She said when she switched from TC to LC bid strategy, got more delivery, but now the CPA is rising. She's wondering if she should switch back and try to lower the CPA, or if you have any thoughts on where she should head.
I mean, first of all, if you're trying to do conversions and you're worried about a CPA, you shouldn't be optimizing for traffic at all at that point. So you should be optimizing for whatever the end event is that you want. If it's a new ad account, then so I would say most of the time you would want to be optimizing for purchase, and then you'd want to be bidding for conversions. So she's talking about two different things. There are ways that you can optimize for a purchase and then bid for view content or for link clicks. But many times you'll see the results on that are mismatched. And it messes with the Facebook algorithm, because what you're saying is, in the end, I want to purchase, but in reality, I really want to only pay for the view content or the link click. And a view content is a full page load versus a link click is just somebody clicking. So it's got more people in that pool, just to help people understand the difference between those things. So you always want to try to go for what your end goal is and optimize that way. But if it's new, you can optimize for things farther up the funnel, basically. So you can optimize for an add to cart event under a conversion objective, and then optimize for conversions as the bid option as well. So that's the way I would go about it, because optimizing for traffic is generally going to bring you less quality people, which makes sense why your CPA is rising.
Yeah, it's just a lot of times I've found it's just the link clickers. I don't know, Facebook. So Facebook, for people who are new, Facebook tracks all this stuff we do. It knows that we're a link clicker guy. We just like to click on links. I don't know who's hanging out on Facebook clicking on links all day, but that's who gets shown your ad, And so like Andrew said, you really want to optimize. I've tested it many times, trying traffic just to try and get more people to the page. And occasionally it can help with new accounts where there isn't that seasoning of the pixel that Facebook can understand yet. But oftentimes it just is way better just to always optimize towards the goal. And I've had clients where we've optimized around add to cart until we get enough purchases, and then we switch to purchases, and it just is much better. So always. And the good thing I think is that a lot of times the default things that Facebook have in the optimization part are good to go with. Not all the settings are good, but in the optimization and bidding section, those are often the best default things to use.
That's a really great point. Okay, so let's see here. We just got a few minutes left. Try to get to the rest of our questions. Michaela asks, and Andrew, I know you work with nonprofits, so I'll toss this one over to you. Can you speak from the nonprofit side? What are some things nonprofits can do to market on social media using ads?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one that's a very low-hanging fruit is the opportunity to take your previous donor list and create a lookalike audience of that list. So that's a big one. Also, being able to create a custom audience of that list and remarket to them. A lot of it is, or have a loyalty kind of play to that previous donor audience. A lot of it in nonprofit world is we don't spend enough time thinking about the value that we as the nonprofit are driving for the person that you're trying to talk to. So, I mean, you say this, support us today and keep our mission going. That makes sense, but only once you understand the true story. So if you understand the emotional side of it and what you're trying to get across of what you actually push forward, that can absolutely help in the way that you're building it out for a nonprofit. I think another one is giving people a range of opportunities. So maybe they don't want to donate a lot, but donating $1 a month is a big thing, and you can just start there, right? And like it doesn't. I mean that may not be. You may not feel like that's worth it, but at the end of the day, they're still supporting you in a small way. So kind of setting up all of those opportunities for me is some of the quick things. The cool new thing that just came out, of course, is now there's a donate button on Instagram, which is on Instagram stories, which allows you to donate right from an Instagram story for nonprofits. So there's little tactical things like that too that can be helpful. But those are some of the things I've found that are kind of the easy wins right off the bat.
I'll go to one last question here before we have to wrap up, and it's a follow-up. We were talking about for smaller businesses with smaller budgets. They were asking specifically just spending $5 per day on a campaign. Is it still advised to use multiple creatives, or would this spread the ads too thin? Anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think, it depends on how long you're running those ads too, because, to make a decision on which ad is the winner for you, you have to have significant results, right? So if you have, $5 a day and you're, you end after a week and you have one ad that had 3 clicks and one ad that had 5, those aren't significant results that you're going to be able to say, hey, this one was a better performer. So you have to balance some of that. And I think testing, testing 2 different things might be worthwhile. I think it's always good to try at least 2 different things if you can. But I think you also maybe want to test that in a more of a sequence and say, let's test this one for 2 weeks and then at $5 a day, and then let's test another one at $5 a day for 2 weeks. And it can depend a little bit on how you set that up too, because so that's my thought. I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts on that.
Steph or Andrew, anything to add?
Yeah, if so $5 a day, and I think it also goes with the amount of ad sets and creatives that are going to be within that campaign. If you have one ad set and 1 or 2 pieces of creative, I would say $5 a day would be okay. But if you have 5 ad sets with 2 pieces of creative, then you have about like 10, and then just increase it, but you're not changing your budget. Now you're really, really spreading yourself out thin. What you would want to do is you would want to increase it based on your campaign level, or you could go into your ad sets and then, increase the budget through there as well. But it's just good to keep in mind that as you're expanding your campaigns and the pieces of creative that you're using and the different audiences, you also have to meet it with the budget as well.
Awesome. Anything else to add, Andrew, before we've got to wrap up?
No, I think it's interesting. I think getting back to the core of what this webinar is about, I think that, there are a number of different things that you can do right now to try to increase conversions, and you can call them hacks or tactics, whatever you want to call them. But I think it's things like we've talked about throughout this webinar thematically. I think it's understanding your budgets, what your goals are, and then testing things like larger audiences, testing things like splitting out interests, trying out Instagram stories on its own, thinking about the way that you're bidding, thinking about the way that you're pitching your creative, and how it's speaking to different segments of your audience. And if you start to consider all of these different things together, I think you'll be surprised at the results that you see, and you're definitely on the right path.
Yeah, those are great themes throughout. And what I heard all of you say over and over and over again is test and iterate, really understand what's working for your business, because it could be that what worked yesterday no longer works today. It's, what you optimized is no longer providing those results. So it is a hands-on situation where we've got to constantly pay attention to that data and what's working and what's not. Facebook never sleeps, right? Neither do we. All right. Well, thank you to all of you for being here with us for Semrush's social chat. Andrea, tell us where we can find you. And I know you've got a webinar coming up too. I would love to learn more about that.
Yeah, you can find me on my website at andreaval.com, VAHL, and I do have a webinar happening tomorrow about Facebook ads and ROI, getting ROI from your Facebook ads, what your strategy is. So that is, I don't know, do people see the link here? It's fbadvertisingsecrets.com/ad strategy.
I think you can give it to Kate and she could drop it in for you. Yeah,
awesome.
that'd be perfect. Steph, how about you? Where can we find you?
So I'll go into the comments and I'll drop some of my information, but definitely at my email. So that's Stephanie@tailwindapp.com, STEPHANNY@tailwindapp.com. My name's spelled a little differently than the average Stephanie, so I always spell it out. And check out Tailwind as well, and drop a line and say hello, and I'll put my contact information in the comments as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Andrew, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can check out foxwelldigital.com. Check out our site. I'm fairly active on Twitter. It's just at Andrew Foxwell. And I also co-host the e-commerce influence podcast, which just surpassed 25,000 downloads a month. So that is at ecommerceinfluence.com. And we released a new episode today, how to create winning content on Facebook and Instagram that some people on here might be interested in.
You.
So if you're curious of that, I'll drop that in here as well. And otherwise, I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you again to everybody that joined us both here live and through the replay. We are here every first Tuesday of every month, and we will be back in June 4th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, and we're going to be talking about social media techniques for a successful lead generation campaign. So make sure to join us June 4th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And until we see you back there, we hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care.
Bye.